Bagmakers, Lisa here from Andrie Designs. If you watched our last video on how to create a zipper pocket with a cork or vinyl overlay, this is the follow-up you've been waiting for. In this video, I'll show you how to cut out your overlay accurately so it looks professional and gives a tidy finish. I'll also show you how to tweak the width of the overlay to suit different sized zipper pockets. It's super handy whether you're using a pre-made template or cutting your own from scratch. Let me know in the comments if you've ever adjusted an overlay before or if this is your first time trying it. Let's go. So when it comes to cutting out an overlay from your chosen fabric, the easiest way I've found is to actually trace the outline of the overlay onto the cork or vinyl or leather that you're going to use and then cut it out. I find it gives a more accurate cut, it gives nicer edges, and it just looks a lot more professional overall rather than trying to cut around the template like you would for fabric with a pattern piece. So I've got a piece of cork here. I'm going to be using the number 4 overlay from our templates, and all I'm going to do on the wrong side of the cork here is I'm going to place the overlay along the edge, and I'm not going to use the raw edge of the cork because I actually want a freshly cut edge so it looks nice and sharp. So I'm just going to go just above that so I can cut that off without too much waste, of course. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use my ruler to hold down the template pattern piece in place so that it doesn't move on me. Now this template I'm using, the number 4 overlay, has nice straight edges all the way around. There's no curves, so I can actually use the edge of my ruler to trace along the edges of the overlay. So I'm just going to line my ruler up on the edge of the overlay and draw my line. So you can see there on the cork I've got my nice straight line, and I'm just going to work my way all the way around so that my overlay template piece is traced onto the back of my cork. Once I've gone around the outside of my template, I'm also going to draw the inside lines to cut out as well, so that that is nice and easy to cut out with my rotary cutter shortly. So once you have traced around the outside and the inside of your overlay, you'll have the outline on your piece of cork or whatever fabric you're using. From here it's nice and straightforward to cut out. So first of all I'm going to cut the outside out using my rotary cutter. Like I said earlier, I don't have curves, so I can just use this and my ruler to get nice straight edges. Once I've gone around the outside, I'm going to cut the inside box out, and I'm going to use my rotary for the 2 long sides, starting just in from the short edges, and I'll actually finish that off with my snips so that I make sure I get a nice and precise corner at each end. So I'm just going to go most of the way across on that side and most of the way across on this side. And then I'm going to grab my snips, and I'm just going to snip right into that corner as square as I can. And then I'm going to come across the short end and into the next corner. And that is cutting out a zipper overlay. So for overlays that have curves, such as our number 3 overlay, the process is very similar to the straight edge ones. However, you need to freehand the ends of the overlay where it's curved in order to then get a nice solid line to then cut out. So if I was cutting an overlay out of this beautiful plum coloured cork, I'm going to turn it over to the wrong side just like before, place my overlay there. I'm just going to place it just in from the edge. I want a nice freshly cut edge, and I'm going to pop my ruler on top to hold it down. What I'm going to do first is draw my straight edges in. So I'm going to draw my outside edges and my inside edges to get those marked up first. And from here I'm going to close the box on the inside of the overlay, so I know that that little bit is done. And then what I'm going to do, leaving my ruler over top to hold my template in place, I'm going to freehand the ends of my overlay into a nice gentle curve. And I'm going to be nice and particular here. I don't want to have a rough curve that doesn't match the other end. So I'm going to make sure it's nice and gentle and follows the template. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to do the other end as well. I'm just going to turn this around. So from here we can take the template off and we can see we've got a nicely traced overlay onto the back of the cork. Just like before, we're going to rotary cut it for the most part. So again, just like tracing, I'm going to start by cutting my straight edges off, and then I will freehand cut my curves. So on the inside of the box I've cut almost to the end, not quite though, because you can't be very accurate with your rotary cutter. And then I'm going to use my snips to cut right into those corners to clear out my box. And then with my snips, I'm going to cut the curved ends of my overlay off, following my line as accurately as I can to get a nice gentle curve. And what I'm going to do is look at the right side, and I'm just going to check that my curves look nice and gentle. Just need a little bit of a tidy here. And that looks really good. So that is how to cut out a template that has curves in it. So these overlays we've provided are suitable for a 7-inch opening in your zipper pocket. So the box measures 7 inches wide. If you were wanting to use these for a narrower zipper opening, so say you had a 5-inch zipper pocket and that was the width of the opening, the easiest way to shorten these up so that they fit a narrower pocket is simply to take your overlay once it's all cut out, and we're going to fold it in half lengthwise to find the center. And I'm going to make sure that the ends here of the box match up so that I get the exact center of my template. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a finger press to fold. And then what I'm going to do with my rotary, so I have an old rotary cutter with an old blade in it, and this is my paper cutting rotary cutter. So what I'm going to do from there is with my fold, and I can see that just here, is I'm going to square everything up and I'm going to cut my overlay in half, right down the center. So I've lined that up on my cutting mat, straight in half, just like that. So say I wanted, like I said before, to make a 5-inch box. This is a 7-inch box, so I need to take 2 inches off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 inch off both sides to shorten down each half, and then I'm going to stick them back together. Easiest way is just to use your rotary cutter and your ruler, lines on there just like you would if you were trimming down a piece of fabric. Line it up with 1 inch in and take those off, and they can be discarded. Same with the other piece, line it up 1 inch off, nice and square, and trim those off. And then from here, we can simply line our pieces back up and we will have a nice 5-inch box in the middle. So I'm going to use the lines on my cutting mat because I want my two pieces to be attached back together nice and square. I don't want them slightly wonky because then I'll end up with a wonky overlay, which really won't look too good. So what I'm going to do is line up one piece on one side with the lines on my cutting mat, and I'm just going to use my pins to hold it in place so it doesn't move. I'm going to line up this one on this side, and I'm going to butt those two cut edges right up together, making sure it's square along the bottom here, as best one can, of course, we're all human. And I'm going to use my ruler to hold that side in place so it doesn't move. And I can feel those joins are sitting nice and flush together. So all I'm going to do is get a little bit of sticky tape now my tape's a bit too wide for this, but I'm just going to tack them together, top and bottom, so that they are stuck, just like that. And then I'm going to lift it up and trim that excess tape off with my snips. Actually no, I'm going to fold it around to the back. A little bit of extra security, right? And that's nicely stuck down. Same with this one. There. Now if you wanted to, you could put some tape on the back edge as well. I don't think it's necessary, but there we go. We've trimmed down an overlay template. My inside box is now 5 inches wide, perfect for a smaller, narrower zipper. If you wanted to increase the width of the zipper overlay to accommodate a wider zipper pocket, so these ones, as I said before, the internal box is 7 inches wide, so that creates a 7-inch opening. Say you wanted to increase the width to a lovely 9-inch wide opening, the easiest way to do that is to cut out your overlay, but don't cut out the inner box yet. What you want to do from here is cut your overlay in half. So fastest way to do that is just to fold it in half, find the center. I'm just going to mark it with a pencil so I can see it. I'm going to line it up on my cutting mat with the lines there, nice and square, and I'm just going to use my ruler to cut that in half, right down the center of the overlay. Just like that. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to use a scrap piece of paper to create the gap, or fill the gap I should say, between our two pattern pieces. So the first one I'm going to take 1/2, it doesn't matter which side you start from, and I'm going to align the bottom edge of the overlay with the nice square edge of the piece of paper, and I'm just going to stick that on with some sticky tape so that it is held in place. You don't need too much of an overlap, so I'm just going to come down here to the end. But I want to make sure that this bottom edge is probably about a 2-inch overlap between my template and my plain paper. And I'm going to check it's nice and square, and I'm going to stick the top edge down and also my cut edge on the inside, just like that. So from here, what I want to do is measure from this line here along to my total zipper opening width. So for this purpose of this video, I'm going to do 9 inches. So I'm going to take my rotary ruler and I'm going to measure my cutout from the opening end here all the way along to 9 inches. 9, and I'm just going to make a mark. So I've got that on my piece of paper, and I'm also going to sort of eyeball it and check it down this bottom edge too. So that is where I want this line to sit. Now on these overlays, that extra gap is a nice tidy 1 inch. So it's a very easy measurement. So from that 9-inch mark, I want to measure 1 more inch along, and I can just use my mat here if I line it up. 1 further inch, I can see through the paper there. And that is where the edge of the overlay is going to sit. So if I tack that in place there and just sit it there, just like that, and then I carefully measure the gap for my box, it should be 9 inches, which it is, which is lovely. So once you've got that gap and that spacing, and essentially if you've gone from a 7-inch gap to a 9-inch gap, you know that this gap in here should be 2 inches, right? Basic maths. So lining your piece of paper, your overlay up with the edge of your paper again, we can tack it down in place so it doesn't move, just like that. Oh, there There we go. So now my overlay reaches the 10" that I want on the inside. So all I'm going to do with my paper rotary cutter is I'm going to cut my overlay out, and because these two ends are tacked onto my scrap piece of paper or my spare piece of paper, they will then forge that gap and close it up for me so I have a wider overlay. So the reason I said in the beginning not to cut out the center is because if you got to this point with it cut out, it's just a bit more fiddly with the gaps in the middle. From here, we've got a nice solid center, and it's nice and easy to then cut that out with your paper scissors or your paper rotary cutter to get a nice even box in the middle of your overlay. And that is how to widen an overlay for a wider zipper pocket opening. And that's all there is to it. Cutting and customizing your zipper overlay doesn't have to be tricky, and once you get the hang of it, you can easily adapt it to suit any project. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future tips like this. And if you have any questions about overlays or want to share what fabric you're using, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Until next time, happy sewing!